to Shanmugam IAS Academy. And today the topic and the heading of February 1st, 2022 is very unique one. So it's about the part of mains GS paper 2, and that is effect of policies on the syllabus, effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interests. This is one part of the syllabus of GS paper 2 mains, UPSC mains. So we need to follow Press Information Bureau 2 of the Government of India's website, and along with that the other editorials from other newspapers like majorly Hindu and the Indian Express, and many newspapers are there. And this India and Israel relations are very important. This can be asked mains, or some of the questions can be related to Israel and its river system, where exactly it is located. As a mapping question also they can ask, and this is very important. So today we are going to study about this analysis. So I have already told you about under which part of the syllabus it is there in GS paper 2 mains, the effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. What exactly is this? We will study the evolution of India's relationship with Israel and Palestine. What are the relations of India with these countries? We'll study here. Actually, when the Nehru and the Indian Gandhian era, that is the idealism and the unequivocally pro-Palestine. We were earlier, that time after the independence, we were pro-Palestine. So India stopped at recognizing Israel. So what exactly is Israel, and when they got different like independence and all, like in 1948, after the years of increasing tensions and failed attempt of partition the Palestine into two states by the UN, that is the tensions have been broken down, because the UN, the partition between the Palestine has been the failed attempt by the UN. So the war has been broke out between the Israel on one side and a coalition of Arab nations on the other side. So this is what happened. In these terms, it was during this time only Israel made the declaration of independence, and finally they established the state of Israel. That time, this was the background, this was history. So why at that time India recognized Israel? Earlier, when it was happened, India stopped recognizing Israel, but finally India has recognized Israel in 1950. As the same way, now Afghanistan, which is under the Taliban control, they are not being recognized by any country till now. So here Israel, that time in 1950, India recognized Israel after so many years, and PM Nehru's that time reasoning, it was that established fact that not doing so would create rancor between the two UN members. They are also UN member. So that is what the reason it was told by that erstwhile Prime Minister of our country. And however, India did not have full diplomatic ties with the Israel. Still, we recognized Israel, but that time we didn't have full diplomatic ties with the Israel. And why? All there was to show for the bilateral relationship was a consulate in Mumbai, which was established in 1953, and mainly for issuing the visas to the Indian Jewish community and to Christian pilgrims. For this purpose, the consulate has been established in Mumbai in 1953. And this too was shut down in 1982 for 6 years. For 6 years this was shut down when the Consul General criticized India in a newspaper's interview. That time the Consul General has criticized India in newspapers interview, so that's why it was shut down for 6 years in 1982. So there was no Indian embassy in Israel till 1992. Till 1992, this is important. Till 1992, there is no embassy, Indian embassy in Israel. And in 1948, India was the only non-Arab state among 13 countries that voted against the UN partition plan of Palestine in the General Assembly, which was led to the creation of Israel. And what are the reasons for India siding with Palestine and a cold shoulder for Israel? I am not talking about the present situation. Now I am talking about the past situation. Why India was sliding with Palestine, and why they are showing cold shoulder for the Israel? Why? What are the exact reasons for that? That we'll study now. Because the India's own partition along the religious lines, we know that historical basis Pakistan and India, and solidarity with the Palestinian people who would be dispossessed, and other reason toward of Pakistan's plan to isolate India over Kashmir, and this is otherwise we'll call this as the geopolitical reason, and later India's energy dependence on the Arab countries. also became a factor. For these reasons, India is sliding with the Palestine. And later, because India's energy dependence on the Arab nations, and also some of the sentiments of Indians own Muslim citizens. So we are a secular country, because to appeal to the sentiments of India's own Muslim citizens, that is domestic policy, politics also is one of the reason. And India and Palestine, the relationship with the Palestine was almost an article of faith in Indian foreign policy for over 4 decades. And that is at the 53rd UN session, what happened? India co-sponsored the draft resolution on the right of the Palestinians to self-determination. So this is happened at the 53rd UN session. And in the 1967 and 73 wars, India lashed out Israel as the aggressor. And in 1970s, what happened? India rallied behind the Palestinian Liberation Organization and its leader, a very famous leader, that is Yasser Arafat, who was received at the head of the state that time and as the sole and legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. And in 1988, what happened? When this Palestinian Liberation Organization declared an independent state of Palestine with its capital in East Jerusalem. And India granted recognition immediately. So here we need to understand one point. In 1948, when Israel declared themselves as independent state, and that time India didn't recognize the Israel. They took time to recognize Israel. But in 1988, when Palestine was independent state, India granted recognition immediately. From this we know that India is very much sliding towards the Palestine that time. But what happened in the changes that happened after 1991? What happened? The opening of the Indian embassy in the Tel Aviv in January 1992. Tel Aviv is in Israel and marked an end to 4 decades of giving Israel the cold shoulder. From this year onwards, India has been slightly sliding towards Israel too. And India's decision to normalize ties with the Israel in 1992 came against the backdrop of the breakup of the Soviet Union. We all know 1991 the Soviet Union has been breakdown. So this is also one of the reason. And another thing is the common threats of terrorism and massive shifts in the geopolitics of the West Asia and also the first Gulf War in 1990. And India-Israel relationship continued to grow after that, mostly through we have many defense deals with them, and in the sectors such as science and technology and agriculture, we all know that there is technically Israel is very forward, most forward country, and India and Israel have very good relations in trade deals, the defense deals, the sectors in science, technology and agriculture. And the high profile visits also took place when earlier NDA government was there, the Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was in office. And what is India's balancing act now with the Palestine? Because we were pro-Palestine, we were showing cold shoulder to Israel in the earlier days, but now we are being sliding towards Israel too. So now how we are going to balance Palestine? So despite growing Indo-Israel ties, New Delhi remained firmly on the side of PLO, but still we didn't left Palestine. We are firmly on the side of the Palestine, which was seen as ready for a political solution, accepted two-state solution. But in 1996, what happened? India has opened a representative office in the Gaza, which later moved to Ramallah, which is in Palestine. And during UPS, that is 10 years on the office, what happened? The balancing act was intensified, and Muhammad Abbas, that is head of the Palestinian Authority that administers the West Bank, visited 2005, 2008, 10 and 12. These 4 years he visited, and India has voted Palestine to become a full member of UNESCO in 2011. This is also has happened. If some questions can be asked, some points are given in the prelims like this thing, so this can be asked. And in 2012, what happened? India co-sponsored the UN General Assembly resolution and enabled Palestine to become a non-member observer state at the UN without voting rights. And India also supported the installation of the Palestinian flag on the UN premises in the September 2005. This is also happened. So the most of the changes has happened in this phase, that is changes after 2014, which is whispering that is the pro-Israel. So this is what happened after 2014. That is, since it opened, our country has opened diplomatic office in 1992 in Israel, that is in Tel Aviv, but is Indian NDA too under the Prime Minister Modi. What happened? They decided to take full ownership of the relationship with the Israel. And in 2016, what happened? India abstained again on a UNHRC resolution against Israel. So until 2007, in various statements with its expressions of support for a two-state resolution, India has always included a line of support of East Jerusalem. That is the capital of Palestinian state. The reference to East Jerusalem went missing, which considered as a substantial shift of India's policy. And in PM Modi's statement during PLO chief Mahmoud Abbas, who was visited in 2017, what happened in 2018? Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel. He was the only Prime Minister of the country to visit Israel in 2018. But what is the backdrop? According to this, is his itinerary did not include Ramallah, that is Palestine. He visited only Israel. He didn't visit the neighbor, the Palestinian state. The signal was that India has, that is clearly that stated that Israel and Palestine relationship and would deal with each separately. They are not mixing them up like normally. They are dealing each of them separately. That is Israel and the Palestine. So India and Israel have a joint working group on counter-terrorism, and two countries also share real-time intelligence to deal with the menace. And technologically, India has been very much like in connection with Israel. So much of trade deals are also happening between two countries. The two countries collaborated to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic also. And the Jewish diaspora in India remains unique because, like other communities, it coexisted peacefully in India for hundreds of years, but maintained its Jewish identity, but despite a long isolation from the other Jewish communities. This is what the exact relationship between the India and Palestine. And what are the other things we need to study? What are the rivers and what are the borders flow which Israel is connected? So these things we need to know in the British point of view. Some questions can be asked. If mains thing, these are all the things from history, from background to till now, what is how India is having relationship with the both the countries. So this is what exactly about today's editorial. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like us and comment if you have any queries. Thank you.